Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live stream where we're talking about creativity, life, and music. My name is Casey Lipka. I'm a vocalist, bassist, and songwriter, bringing people together to talk about their creative process. And I'm so excited to welcome Carlos McMillan Fuentes. He's a classically trained pianist, composer, singer-songwriter, music educator, and a skilled accompanist. I originally discovered Carlos when I heard him play with his duo, Carlos and Brennan. They are fantastic, and they were invited to perform at Carnegie Hall, by the way. I've had the opportunity to spend a little bit more time with Carlos over the past few months. He is a prolific composer. He has written hundreds. Did you hear that? Hundreds of pieces, including choral works, concertos, film scores, art songs, and solo piano pieces. He's also a singer-songwriter, blending his love for pop, jazz, R&B, and soul. I've been steeping in his music for the past few days, listening to his the duo album, Carlos and Brennan, all this morning. But one piece that I dug up that I really love of his is Night Poem, Opus number 17, which I believe he wrote in 2008. It's a solo piano work, and it has these layered, floating, dancing arpeggios, and it's filled with emotion. And I'm so excited to welcome him and talk to him about his music. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, Casey. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, so excited for you to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well today. I'm definitely keeping my head up and keeping my nose to the grindstone with my music and trying to just do something for myself every day to keep my forward momentum going. I think that's really important to have things that I can work on each and every day to keep me focused and not lose
Mm.
any momentum.
Mm. I was curious to ask you, what does your life look like in quarantine being a creative person?
It's actually been pretty good. I'm quarantining at home with my family, so I'm here with my parents and my brother. And my brother's an artist, so there's always art kind of happening in the house in some kind of capacity. I start my day with some kind of nature excursion, whether it's a walk or a jog or some just being able to get outside, start my day with some fresh air. I have been able to spend time in the morning creating music, composing. Also, spend time in the morning practicing piano, which is
Mm.
really nice to be able to do that every single day. And the afternoon, so the mornings are kind of my time for myself. That's the time when I really get to meditate and kind of center myself and do some reading, different kinds of literature, spiritual literature, what have you. Just feed my soul and feed my energy. And then in the afternoon, that's kind of my time. Afternoons and evenings are my time for everyone else. So that's when I teach my lessons. I teach privately. I have a little studio of students who I teach multiple times a week. And yeah, try to leave a little bit of time in the evening for maybe some Zoom meetings with friends, and make sure that I'm eating, healthy foods every day and all of that. So that's it in a nutshell. That's my everyday in a nutshell since we've
Yeah,
started this whole process.
yeah. It sounds like you kind of partition your life right now. In the mornings is a self-care Carlos and creative Carlos, and then in the afternoons you're contributing to other people and other musicians or students, like you were saying. And then in the evenings you possibly take some friend time or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Wonderful. Oh, I
Yeah,
love
it took a little while to kind of to strike the balance, because nobody saw this coming, with the way that it has gone down. So there was definitely some time at the beginning that was just getting my bearings and figuring out like how am I gonna keep going, through all of this. Things can get overwhelming if you let them. So some trial and error really, and just time spent with myself, like truly in myself, helped me figure out what I really needed. And so, this is kind of the best case scenario now, being able to work through that and just figure out what my needs really were. So, yeah.
Yeah. Has this time shaped or influenced how has this time shaped your musical your musical creativity and your compositions?
It has shaped it enormously, for a couple of different reasons. One, it's been an emotional roller coaster, for me and for everyone. For a
Mhm.
lot of the artists that I stay in touch with, everybody's gone through their own version of some kind of transition, and it hasn't always been good transitions for everybody. For example, I'm friends with a model who lives in Europe, and he lost all of his work, as you can imagine, not being able to interact with people. And so it's been a constant process of really just figuring out, how to keep going and ways to engage with my art. And fortunately for me, I'm a pianist by trade and a composer, and those are things that you can do. You don't really need social interaction to practice the piano. And composing also is something that ultimately is a solitary act. It's something that you can do in community, and you certainly want feedback from other people, but the act of composing itself is something that you can do by yourself. So having all this time at home has enabled me to spend more time working on compositions. I've resolved to finish old projects, things that have been brewing on the back burner for a long time that I haven't had an opportunity to really dig into, because I figure, why not? Like, when am I ever going to have an opportunity? And I use that word, in a certain sense. When am I ever going to have the opportunity to stay at home and to work, and to be told to stay at home, and to just sit down and to create, in my case, to create. So I figure I may as well, I'd be a fool not to try to take that and use it to my advantage, So that has guided my creativity, and it's been really, really powerful, to be able to do that.
I'd love to hear what your composition process looks like.
Yeah. So it kind of works a number of different ways. I'm a pianist, and I went to school for music composition, which is in sort of the traditional Western sense of creating notated scores, writing for ensembles, knowing instruments and their ranges, knowing voice types and their ranges, all of that kind of stuff, and how they sound interacting with each other. So a lot of it is, a lot of the pre-work that goes into composing for me is score studying the works of composers who I admire, or pieces that maybe are trying to communicate an aesthetic aim that I maybe seek to either emulate or be inspired by. And then when it comes time to actually compose, it happens many different ways. Sometimes it comes as a melody, just transported into my brain from the ether or whatever. And then I can take that and start to harmonize it and build from there. Sometimes it's a chord progression. Sometimes it's a lyric. Sometimes it's more abstract. Sometimes one of the things that I've done in some of my compositions is try to communicate a lot of ideas about nature through music, and I've really experimented with ways of communicating, forms and shapes and textures through music, and all of that is, of course, very subjective. It's something that is just my impression of a tree, or my impression of water, or whatever. But I've really tried to explore different ways of communicating those sorts of qualities in musical form. So that can be something that it can be very time consuming, honestly, to sit there and really think about ways to communicate a tree. So if I have a tree that I'm trying to communicate in musical form, I think about a tree as being a very sturdy, perhaps an ancient thing. So maybe the music is not really going anywhere fast. It's something very grounded and very solid and very, rooted in the earth. So just solid, maybe a low foundation. Then, in terms of texture, maybe it's something that, of course you can have, percussion, wood blocks and things like that. But, I love the sound of wind blowing through leaves and blowing through the branches of a tree. So that might be a sound that I try to emulate or try to evoke through the use of woodwinds, or through the use of course, percussion. You can do so much with percussion. With gently sort of oscillating textures in the strings and things like that, to just create that sort of shimmery, beautiful quality. Those are the sorts of things that I think about when I'm trying to create, is how do I really capture the essence of whatever it is that I want to compose in this piece. And so it can be very time consuming. There's a lot of intellectual processing and thinking that happens before I even set pencil to paper sometimes.
So you're talking about nature and a tree. Do you have a piece that's about a tree?
I have a piece that's about a cricket.
Okay. So you're talking about nature. Walk us through what you might do. What might be a possible, part of your process for writing about this tree?
Yeah. So my first step would be observation. My first step would be to get out there and look at trees. I would go out into a park and just observe different kinds of trees, maybe take some pictures, maybe even do some sketches, just really quick kind of references for shapes and textures and designs. And then maybe do some research online as well as different types of trees and maybe like recordings of wind blowing through trees, or just trying to inundate myself with as much information and knowledge as I can about the subject, about the tree. Then when it comes time to compose, then it's like, all right, I'm going to sit down and figure out what am I really trying to communicate about this tree? Am I just trying to communicate its presence, or am I trying to communicate a story? Does this tree, of course it's alive, but am I going to sort of personify it and have it be the star of a journey? Like the tree is the subject of this composition in that sense? Or is it like a portrait of a tree? Or is it whatever, like that's where the creativity can really come into play, and just, the sky is the limit as far as what I do with that concept.
Okay. So first step, observation. Second step, you're just steeping in the different possible sounds, but also maybe the characteristics of the thing that you're trying to emulate. And then what does the transferring it to music part look like?
That is trial and error. I have found it really works well for that. Just experimenting with things. I'm grateful that I'm a pianist, because I am able to just play directly, chords and harmonies. But I use different types of software. Finale is great for orchestral playback, to get an idea of different instruments and how they can interact in terms of timbre, in terms of, dynamics and phrasing. I can experiment using Ableton as well. That's another software that I use, typically more for like actual songwriting, if I'm doing things that, use my voice or somebody else's voice. But I do, there's a lot with electronic sounds. You can, the sky really is the limit. You can create anything at all with an electronic palette of sounds. So yeah. I think it just depends on what I'm trying, what I want the piece to be, how I take that next step to actually create the music. And often it has been, acoustic instruments, it has been orchestra, it has been ensembles, but I have been experimenting more with Ableton and electronic things in the last couple of years too.
I think you have an interesting position in terms of your composition brain. You have your classical training and background, and you also have your interest in contemporary pop and R&B and soul. So how do you negotiate all of those different sonic worlds as an artist?
For me, I realized pretty early on that genre was kind of meaningless for me. To me, music, I either, for me, it's like I like it, or maybe I don't like it as much, but I respect it for what it is, It's either something that I want to draw from, or something that I can appreciate and say, okay, well, that's cool, but I may not, draw from it and incorporate it into my toolkit. So my compositions sometimes, have this eclectic mix of things in them, where it might be a classical, symphonic work, but it might use like, a pop beat or something, something that's drawn from pop, or, it might be, a piano concerto that uses jazz harmonies and uses them, in a very sort of non-traditional way. It could be, incorporating I don't know. There's so many different. I've done a lot of really strange things. I think in terms of my choices for compositions, which unfortunately sometimes with the acoustic stuff makes them difficult to perform. You know,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's sort of the toss up is that you say, well, I want to include this instrument or I want to include this sound in this orchestral soundscape. Well, it's like, okay, well, that's going to make the piece 10 times harder to perform because you've included that now. So that's the sort of toss up that comes with that. But I choose to stay true to the artistic vision and so I guess the answer is they all just mix up. Everything gets mixed up in there. It comes out in funny ways and kind of never know what you're going to end up with one of my compositions.
Speaking of your compositions, I heard from a little birdie that you'll be releasing a solo album soon. I look forward to hearing more about that. Can you share any little tidbits about what you're working on?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So this project is called A Series of I Am Statements. And it's a collection of 6 songs that I've written over the last maybe decade or so. Like some of them go back pretty far. And the reason why it's taken so long to finish is because to be completely honest, as an artist, I struggle sometimes with insecurity about my sound. I struggle with really being uh true to my artistic vision. Like I hear it in my head a certain way, and I really want that to speak when somebody hears it without them having to imagine like, oh, I kind of see what you're going. It's like, no, I would like as a composer for you to be able to hear the piece and be able to digest it and understand, oh, okay, I see what this thing is. So that project has, I'll work on it for a little while and then I'll put it away because I'm like, oh, well, I don't think these vocals are good enough, or I think this is great, but I'm not really satisfied. Something just feels missing, there's a missing sound or something's not clear in the mix. So it's been a lot of that. And for me, the real ticket has been working with one of my best friends who is a producer. He lives in Minnesota. And he is just a godsend. I mean, we started actually playing piano in the same piano class back in North Carolina where we grew up in middle school. And I sort of, took the classical route. He went more the production sort of electronic route, although he plays guitar and does play piano as well too. But he definitely dug deep as a producer. And so it was really nice to be able to reconnect with him and bounce ideas off of him without any kind of explanation, like this is what I'm trying to do. I can just share stuff with him. And that's made all the difference. And now I feel like I'm at a point where I'm confident in my vocal technique. I'm confident in what I'm creating as a producer and as a sound engineer. And it really enables me to let what I've been doing as a composer shine through. So this album is going to have a mix of all of those things. You'll hear influences of classical music, classical piano. You'll hear influences of jazz. You'll hear influences of R&B. You'll hear influences of pop for sure. Lots of pop influence, certainly in terms of the structure of songs and the length of the music. And then you'll just hear some stuff that you ain't never heard before, I hope, like.
So where can people check out your music?
So it's a couple places right now. I think if you visit my website, which is cmfuentesmusic.com, it's a nice sort of central point because I have music that's available on YouTube for streaming. I have pieces that are available on SoundCloud, different pieces available on SoundCloud. And yeah, those are the 2 big places I would say. SoundCloud and YouTube are the big places where my music is currently held. And one of my goals of this coming year with releasing this project is to start actually making more recordings of my compositions so that I can distribute them through, the same channels that most people consume music: Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, all of that. It'd just be nice to be able to have it accessible. And people my friends tease me about that. You're like, when are we going to hear some of this music? Like, we know it's good. We just want to hear it. Like it's coming. I promise.
Well,
so it's time to.
Definitely check out his website. And another project, which I'm putting here on the screen, is carlosandbrennan.com. You have an album up there for sale. Yeah. That's beautiful. It is so beautiful. Please check out his music. Yeah, so you're talking about composition, or I mean collaboration and working with another producer and also your duo project with Brennan. I'm wondering how do you collaborate with other musicians? I know that might sound like a simple question, but somebody was asking me that the other day. So I thought I would ask you, what does that look like?
No, I think that's a great question because it is sort of an art form, you know? Communicating with other musicians and, well, that's really what it is communicating with other musicians to collaborate. That's how it's done. I have found that the best experiences I have with collaborating really involve me first and foremost humbling myself, you know, just being able to approach somebody earnestly and honestly, open, and just listening to what they have to say, right? Because even if in my head I have an idea of what the thing should be, I often find that after having one conversation with the person I'm collaborating with, that idea changes completely. It can turn into something completely different because this person is bringing their experiences, they're bringing their training, they're bringing their background and beliefs, core beliefs into all the mix. And it's important for me to listen first before I start trying to, you know, add anything to it. So I would say just in general, you know, I love collaborating with musicians because it's an opportunity to learn. It really is an opportunity to grow and to experience music from somebody else's perspective, you know, from their ears and eyes and brain and heart. So that is the first thing I think, and that's the most important thing along the way is understand that, you know, as an artist, you don't have all the answers. You know, even if this is the way that Beethoven's been done for 200 years, this Beethoven doesn't have to be done this way in this moment with this person on this stage. It can be something different, and that's okay. You know, people will respond to your sincerity. You know, as an audience member, as a listener, people respond to sincerity. They respond to you being genuine and honest, and your conviction with your performance. They don't respond as much to it being, you know, stylistically accurate or having to sound a certain thing, you know, certain way. So I would say that that's the main thing, is just being willing to listen and like really listen, and to go back even if you think you got it right. Be willing to go back and try it again, be willing to look at it from a different perspective. And I've created some incredible pieces that way, you know, just from being willing to listen to other people's opinions on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about, you have a certain idea and then immediately when you work with somebody else, the whole thing is thrown out the window sometimes because it's a whole different thing when you're working with somebody else. The sonic ideas and the interaction, the communication combine in this melting pot that is totally a different thing than you.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I don't have all the answers. Like, I mean, I have no problem at all admitting that I do not have all the answers on much of anything. You know, I'm always a work in progress. I'm always growing. I'm always listening. I'm always trying to learn. I've always been somebody who just wants to know stuff. I just want to know answers. I just want to understand things deeply. Um, you know, before I'm even willing to try to speak on something, I really want to make sure I've listened to all sides of it and really tried to dissect it and understand it. And, you know, so
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what do you wish you would have known when you started out composing? If you could go back and visit an earlier version of yourself, what would you tell Carlos starting out?
I really wish that early on I could have told myself to trust my own sense of originality. You know, I think, you know, again, being a classical pianist, my upbringing, my musical upbringing was listening to particularly a lot of music by romantic composers, you know, Chopin and Brahms and Liszt. And you know, those guys were my bread and butter when I was learning how to, you know, how to play the piano. And so they were my sort of starting point as composers too. I wanted to really write in this romantic vein and really have it be something that's, you know, long, beautiful melodies and lush harmonies and all that stuff. And to some extent, I've never lost that. But what I wish I'd been able to trust earlier was that sometimes if I have an idea that might be strange, where the sonic is strange. Like the melody might not be, you know, exactly the most singable thing, or the harmony might not make the most sense on the first listen, you know, or the rhythm might be really strange. Like, if I could have trusted some of those ideas that I had in the first place and not tried to sanitize them, smooth them out, and make them polished and perfect, I think I would be, you know, it's kind of useless for me to speculate and say I'd be further along or I'd be more developed as a composer, because I don't even know what that means. You know, what does that really mean? Where does that start and end? But I think that you know, I eventually learned that lesson, is what I can say for sure. I eventually learned that I should trust, you know, the weird ideas, the weird compositions, the weird structures of pieces, and you know, lean into that a little bit more, because if you really take any idea and tinker with it long enough, you can come up with something that you're really, you know, that represents you and that's satisfying, as opposed to just trying to create something because you think it's the thing that you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's great advice. I'm gonna hold that for myself, because I think trusting ourselves and our visions and the sounds that come out every day. I mean, sometimes I'm sitting during songwriting time, which Carlos and I meet with a group of friends. We do some composition together, and sometimes I'm starting something and the judgment part comes out, and it's like, no, that's not a good idea, Casey. But every single time I push past that, I think, oh yeah, okay, wait, this grew into something bigger, and this never would have been created had I listened to that inner critical voice.
That has been my experience as well. Very much that. Like, I'll create something and I'm like, this isn't very good. I don't like this. But if I just push past that, just keep working on it just a little bit longer, it's like something starts to click. It's like the music starts to do what it will, you know? There was it's a silly reference, but in the movie The Last Unicorn, there's a scene where the wizard, what's his name, Schmendrick, the magician, is you know, he's trying to control the magic, and he says, "Magic, do as you will. Magic, do as you will." And you know, like, you know, he comes in, he's the hero in that moment in the story and saves the day, and because the magic is what it will. And it's really that way with music. You know, if I find when I get out of the music's way and stop trying to mold it and make it do something, and just write, just do it, just do the thing, the magic will do as it will. You know, the music will turn into what it wants to be, and has pretty much always been something better than whatever I had in mind. You know, whatever little small vision I had of what this piece was supposed to be, if I get out of its way, it's always better.
When you get out of the song or the composition's way. I love that.
Yes, I have to get out of the music's way.
Yeah.
Stop trying to block it and do something with it. Like, just let it be what it is.
I was talking to somebody last week, a songwriter, who, in conversation, and she was saying, oh, ask the song what it wants. If you do this, what will happen? What does the song think of this? I mean, you know, we all have our different approaches, and I personally love that as I'm working on a song that I'm trying to chip away and finish, asking those questions. What would happen if, or what does this part mean, or what does it need, or things like that.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear you say that. I think that is it's interesting to hear that concept come from another artist.
Huh? Yes, this is one reason that I love that we're talking about this. Hearing your process, hearing your thoughts about everything. I love it. And I know that you have synesthesia, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how that might affect your music.
Yeah, so I have the type of synesthesia which is called colored hearing. There's another scientific term, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but point is that music, specific pitches and the ways that they're organized, to me evoke colors. It's not that I'm seeing the colors like everything is red or it's purple, but it's like the sensation. It's the same way that when you look at something that's red and you recognize that's red, You know, it's that same sort of process that happens where I hear something and it's like, that's red, you know, which maybe doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but to me, it's just the way my brain is wired. And I didn't even realize it was anything unusual for a long time until I was in maybe sometime in middle school or high school, where I was talking to my family about, you know, this green piece or something like that, and they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "It's green. You know, this note is green, and the way it interacts with the blue." And they're like, "That's not something that people normally say. Like, that's not a normal way to describe this. Like, people don't see colors." And
Mm.
so I did research and found out that it was actually a medical condition and a neurological condition. And so from then on, it was like, this is something I could potentially use to create. You know, this is something that could be fuel for my compositional process. And the first piece that I really decided to use it as a foundation for a composition was my piece Night Poem.
Oh,
Night,
fascinating.
Night Poem was the first composition that I explicitly said, all right, I'm going to create this particular palette of colors with synesthesia being my guide for how I created it. And, you know, that piece is special to me for that reason and for other reasons too. It's a really special composition for me. A lot of internal work happening in the composition of that piece. And learning to love myself, including my colored hearing and all of that. So yeah, so I still utilize that, especially if I'm trying to evoke certain palettes of colors are stronger than others. Warm colors, red, orange, and yellow are really, really bright for me. It using synesthesia, so like A major and F minor have really bright colors. Darker palettes are things like, you know, B flat has a very dark color, E flat has an even darker color. So that's the kind of spectrum I'm going for if I want to evoke like the night sky or something like that. I start with that palette.
Wow.
You know, if I'm trying to evoke something that's more like midday or just kind of, you know, like it is, you know, right now, just the sun is up and it's daytime, I might go for like a C major or a G major or a D major, something that's just warmer. Later afternoon where things start to kind of get more golden and into that sunset colors like E major and F sharp. And then sunset could be all kinds of things. You know, you can mix and match all kinds of colors for sunset and sunrise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so fascinated that you're saying that Night Poem is the first piece that you really delved into that and intentionally worked on that, because that piece stuck out to me and resonated with me so much. I mean, I felt like it was an emotional journey, and I didn't quite know how to describe it really, other than listening and taking in the music. And is here. Matthew Streeter is here. Mindy Giles is here. Matthew says, what I'd give to know the color sensation of a cargo truck horn blaring behind on the open road. What color is that, Carlos? What color is that?
Probably a lot of brown. I don't know. I mean, like brown and green. I have to hear it.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Mindy. So happy to have you all here.
Like that kind of like never mind. Never mind. Never mind. I'd love to hear it, and then I will tell you what I'm hearing.
All right. So, you know, send Carlos the car horn. Send Carlos the truck horn, and then he'll get to work on that. Maybe, you know, it's a commission, so you'll have to, you know, compensate.
It's what, you know, like browns can be really, really lovely. Like when we're talking about the earth, when we're talking about trees, and we're talking about, you know, wood and just, you know, beautiful, that sort of brown can be really lovely. But what I was imagining is like not that at all. I'm thinking of like when you go to a park and you're looking along the trails where ducks have been, like that kind of brown. Less lovely.
So for the people who are watching, I'm curious, do you have any questions for Carlos or I about creating music or creativity? And Yeah, curious to know if anything comes up. Carlos, do you have a question for people who are watching?
Oh, wow. I don't know.
Yeah, throwing it back your way.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been asked that question. Like, do I have a question from the people watching? I don't know.
Well, I have a question for people who are watching. When are you Carlos's music? It's at cmfuentes.com, or he also has an Instagram. I'll put it up here. Symphonos, which I thought that was a clever phrase, by the way. And you can
lucky I got that.
Yeah, you can pick up my music at caseylipka.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Casey Lipka. I do host some songwriting workshops, music writing workshops. Maybe Carlos will be a guest at some point.
I would love to if you would have me.
Yeah. So you can find information on my website. Is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
I would just say, listening, a couple things. I would say, for one thing, thank you for your patience with me, as I've been creating so much music, but a lot of it hasn't been out to the world yet. A lot of bigger pieces and older projects that I've talked to people about. I'm really excited about being able to share them with you. So I thank you guys for your support and for always being willing to listen to my new compositions and new songs and what have you. And just know that there's a lot more on the way. Pretty soon there's going to be just a whole bunch of stuff floating around. You're going to be just like,
ooh, that's
where to begin. That's the hope.
Omari is here. Hi, Omari. And he's asking, have you written an opera or interested in composing one?
I am absolutely interested in composing an opera. I have a couple of in mind. We can definitely talk about it if you'd like. I'll say one is based on a historical figure, a certain woman who lived in ancient Egypt. I don't want to give away too much information because I don't want anybody taking my idea. Well, I just have this vision for how it's going to come together, and I'm really excited about being able to do that. And then I've talked to other people about ideas they've had for operas, and there's some ones out there. So it's just a question of opportunity. Like, I would love to be able to write an opera or a musical as well, actually, too.
I have a feeling that, your music and Omari's and Rogue Music Project, I'm putting the intention out there. I hope that some collaboration happens in the future.
Me too.
Crossing my fingers for that opera.
Those are some powerhouses, like just some musical houses.
Yes. Omari says thank you. Yes, your music is amazing, Omari. I would love to have you on.
To you, Omari.
Yeah. You were saying about people taking ideas, and I was just reading, I'm reading the book Big Magic, I think by Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she's talking about how if you don't capture an idea soon enough, that the idea will creatively leave you and visit somebody else.
Yep. I believe that is true. I really do. I really, really do. It's like, if I don't do something, it goes back to that humility that we were talking about earlier. It's like, I feel like I have a gift. I know that I have a gift and a purpose to create music, to be able to share, these emotions and these experiences with the world. But I also am not so, up on that if I don't create it, it's not like the world is going to stop rotating and everything's going to come crashing down because I didn't finish this piece. Whatever is left undone by my negligence or unwillingness to cooperate, somebody else is going to do it and do it better. That's the beauty of being human, is we're all so interconnected, and we all, these ideas flow so freely. So that's why my opera, I'm just holding on to that one idea, because I really want to do this. If somebody else does it, cool, but I would really just, You're
not ready for it to creatively leave you yet.
No, not yet. It's like, let me just try first. If it doesn't work, fine, but let me try it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your process in composing music. Again, for people who are just tuning in, where can they find your music and when can they expect your album?
I expect the album at the end of the summer. So that'll be, I don't have a hard date set yet, but it'll be sometime in the next couple of months. Things are in their final phases where that's concerned. I'm really excited about that little project. But you can find the fuentesmusic.com. You can also search YouTube and search for it on SoundCloud. All linked on my website, though. So if you go to my website, you'll be able to find links to anything that is up there. And just stay tuned. That's the other thing I would say. Really and truly stay tuned. I have a lot of big things are in their finishing stages right now, besides this album, that I'm really looking forward to getting out there. A symphony I've written that I'm entering into competitions, and just, we'll see how things go for me in the next couple of years and couple of months and weeks
Wow.
and days.
Exciting. Thank you for sharing your time with me and with people watching.
My pleasure.
Yes. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.